Luciana looked out the kitchen window as the rain pounded the streets outside. The sound of the drops hitting the glass echoed her own uneasiness. The round clock on the wall read 5:45 in the morning. She had exactly 15 minutes to finish her coffee and leave, facing another day of work as a chambermaid at the luxurious hotel Villa Verona. "Luciana, are you ready yet, my dear?" Donna Estella's warm, hoarse voice echoed through the small apartment. The elderly woman, with gray hair tied in a simple bun, appeared in the living room wrapped in her old floral robe. Despite her 70 years and fragile health, her posture remained firm, the result of years of facing the difficulties of raising her granddaughter and great-grandson alone. "Almost, Grandma. I just need to put on my sneakers," Luciana replied, trying to hide her tiredness. She knew that any sign of weakness would worry Donna Estella even more, who had a watchful and protective look on her face. "Don't worry about me. I'll bring you some sweets today. They're preparing a wedding at the hotel," she added, trying to divert the conversation. "Luciana, please don't bring anything from there," Donna Estella scolded gently but firmly. "Whatever comes from there belongs to the hotel. Honesty is everything, my dear." Luciana smiled sideways, adjusting her worn leather coat. Her grandmother had always been adamant about these values, something she admired but sometimes thought was exaggerated. "Yes, ma'am. No smuggling of brigadeiros," Luciana joked, eliciting a light laugh from Estella. She kissed her grandmother on the forehead and peeked into the room where little Gabriel was still sleeping soundly. "He's so peaceful. Take good care of our boy, okay? May God guide you, my dear," Donna Estella said with a silent prayer on her lips as she watched Luciana leave. At the bus stop, the cold morning wind bit her skin, and the persistent rain seemed to give no respite. Luciana hugged herself, holding the umbrella tightly. As she boarded the crowded bus, she was jostled by the crush of passengers, but she remained patient. Her reflection in the fogged-up glass made her think, "Surely there's something better waiting for me. I just have to keep going." As the bus sped through the wet city streets, Luciana mentally prepared herself for the day, oblivious to the fact that her destiny was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. The Hotel Villa Verona had a majestic aura. Its impeccable glass doors reflected Luciana's hurried movement as she entered. She smoothed down her wet hair, took off her sodden coat, and hung it in the cloakroom. Her simple but elegant uniform was slightly wrinkled, but she didn't have time to worry about that. There was a big wedding that day, and the hotel was in full swing. "Lou, did you see the schedule? We're alone in the pool area today," said Clara, her colleague and friend, as she arranged towels on the service card. Clara was always the optimist of the group, but even she seemed a little worried about the amount of work to do. "It's okay, Clara. If you need any help, just call. We'll take care of everything." As always, Luciana replied with an encouraging smile. Before they could talk any further, the deep voice of Mauro, the team manager, echoed through the hallway. "Luciana, Clara, attention. We have important guests today. I want everything perfect. Luciana, check the outside area. And Clara, focus on the rooms upstairs. No distractions." Luciana nodded, but something in Mauro's expression bothered her. He was known for his sternness, but lately he seemed to be testing the limits of her patience. She took a deep breath and headed for the pool. The rain had stopped, but the air was still humid and heavy. As she approached, a muffled sound caught her attention. At first, it seemed to be just the sound of rippling water, but soon she noticed a strange movement. Looking closer, she saw something small struggling in the pool. "My God, it's a child!" she cried, her heart racing. Without thinking, she threw her cell phone on the ground and dove into the freezing water, ignoring the shock of the cold that took over her body. The boy, about 6 years old, was completely panicked, his arms trying to grab something but failing. "Calm down, I'm here. It's going to be okay," Luciana shouted as she swam hard. She reached the boy and pulled him with difficulty to the surface, feeling the weight of his body and the desperation he carried. When they finally reached the edge, she laid him on the ground and checked if he was breathing. "Please wake up," she whispered, as she began to remember the resuscitation techniques she had learned in first aid training. After a few moments that seemed like an eternity, the boy coughed, expelling water, and began to cry. "It's okay now. You're safe," Luciana said, hugging him tightly as she felt her own tears of relief flow. The silence was broken by the sound of hurried footsteps and voices in the distance. It was the moment when Luciana's world would begin to change, but she didn't know it yet. Luciana was still holding the boy in her arms when she heard hurried footsteps echoing through the pool area. 2 hotel employees arrived first, followed by a couple who appeared to be the child's parents. The mother, a woman with delicate features and an elegant dress, let out a scream when she saw her son. "Leonardo, my baby!" She ran, falling to her knees beside the child, who was now sobbing in Luciana's arms. The father, a tall man in an impeccable suit, stopped a little further away, assessing the situation with distressed eyes. "He's fine," Luciana said, trying to calm the woman while stroking the boy's hair. "He swallowed some water, but he's breathing normally now." "How did this happen?" the father asked, his voice full of concern but also indignation. He looked around as if searching for someone to blame. Before Luciana could answer, Mauro appeared, hurriedly and visibly uncomfortable. "Mr. and Mrs. Fernandez, I deeply regret what happened. We are investigating the incident. I assure you that we will resolve this immediately." The father crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "Investigating? My son almost died. This is unacceptable." Mauro gave Luciana a stern look, as if he had already found his culprit. "Luciana, where were you when this happened?" Luciana stood up, trying to remain calm. "I was checking the area, as you asked. I heard the noise and ran to save him. You should have stopped this from happening," Mauro retorted, pointing his finger. "Your only job here is to ensure the safety and well-being of the guests." The injustice of the accusation burned inside Luciana. "With all due respect, I did what I could to save his life. I am not responsible for how he fell into the pool. Where were the people responsible?" The boy's mother, still kneeling beside him, looked up at Mauro. "She saved my son's life. If it weren't for her, he would be dead." Her voice trembled, but it held a tone of gratitude. Mauro hesitated, but his gaze remained hard on Luciana. "That doesn't change the fact that there was a mistake. And mistakes have consequences." Luciana knew what that meant. Even though she had done the right thing, she was already feeling the weight of the punishment Mauro was ready to impose. Her body was still shaking from the physical exertion and the cold, but the thought of losing her job was an even harder blow to bear. "I will finish my task, sir," she said in a controlled tone, turning to leave before the tears could spill over. As she walked away, Luciana heard the child's father say something to Mauro, but she couldn't make out the words. She felt only the cold of the water on her skin and the heat of his indignation. She had saved a life, but it seemed she was about to pay a high price for it. Luciana returned to the locker room, where the dampness of her clothes seemed to weigh more heavily than ever. She was shaking, not just from the cold, but from the tension she had been carrying since the incident in the pool. Her thoughts were jumbled, but the anger at being treated as the culprit was growing in her chest. As she was changing her uniform, Clara came in, her eyes wide and her voice full of concern. "Lou, I just heard Mauro talking to management. He's saying you were negligent. You saved that boy, for God's sake. How can they accuse you of that?" Luciana sighed, trying to hide her frustration. "I knew he would try to turn this against me, but I won't stay quiet. What I did was right, and I don't regret it." Before Clara could respond, Mauro appeared in the doorway, his posture imposing and his gaze full of disapproval. "Luciana, we need to talk. Now." Luciana followed him to the meeting room, where the atmosphere was tense. Mauro closed the door and got straight to the point. "Management has been informed of what happened. Despite your efforts to save the child, your failure to prevent the incident was unacceptable. I am terminating you, effective immediately." The ground seemed to fall away beneath Luciana's feet. She tried to process his words, but her mind was spinning. "You're firing me? For saving a life?" Her voice was incredulous, barely above a whisper. Mauro shrugged, keeping his tone impersonal. "It's not just about that. It's about the rules. We can't allow a situation like this to happen again. This is ridiculous." Luciana raised her voice, for the first time allowing her indignation to show. "You're using me as a scapegoat." "I did what any decent person would do." Morrow remained impassive. "Decency doesn't pay the hotel bills, Luciana. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to fill out the paperwork." She stood up, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. She gathered her things from the locker and left the hotel without looking back. Each step seemed to weigh more heavily, and the injustice of this moment was almost too much for her. Unbearable. When she got home, her grandmother, Donna Estella, was in the kitchen making tea. "Luciana, you're wet and pale." "What happened?" she asked, looking worried. Luciana hesitated for a moment, but she didn't want to hide anything. She sat down at the table and told her everything, from the rescue to her dismissal. Estella listened in silence, her eyes fixed on her granddaughter. "My daughter, what you did was right. No matter what anyone says or does, you saved a life. This is bigger than any job," Estella said, holding Luciana's hand firmly. While the warmth of the tea brought her some comfort, Luciana tried to imagine what she would do next. She still didn't know that this unfair decision would be just the beginning of something much bigger. The silence of the small apartment was broken by a firm knock on the door. It was late afternoon, and Luciana was still processing the day's events. With her heart racing, she got up from the table and went to answer the door, wondering who it could be. When she opened the door, she was met by a tall man in a dark suit with an impeccable appearance. He had a serious expression, but his eyes conveyed genuine curiosity. "Good afternoon. Are you Luciana?" he asked, in a polite but direct tone. "Yes, it's me." "Who are you?" she replied, confused. In the background, Donna Estella and Gabriel peered curiously from the hallway. "My name is Rafael Fernandez. I think you saved my son's life today," the man said, with a pause loaded with meaning. "May I come in? I'd like to talk." Luciana blinked in surprise. "Of course, come in," she replied, stepping aside to let him pass. Rafael entered, analyzing the modest space discreetly. He sat on the small sofa, adjusting his tie as if trying to find the right words. "I came to thank you. My son Leonardo is alive today because of you," Rafael began, leaning forward. "I know you lost your job because of this, and I'm sorry. What happened was unacceptable." Luciana, still suspicious, crossed her arms. "I appreciate your words, but words don't change what happened. They blamed me for something I did from the heart. I don't know how to move on now." Rafael shook his head, looking frustrated. "I understand your anger, but I'm not here just to apologize. I want to correct this injustice. You deserve more than that." Donna Estella, who had remained silent until then, stepped forward. "And how do you intend to correct something like this? My granddaughter was humiliated for doing the right thing. That's not easily fixed." Rafael took a deep breath. "I'm a businessman, Donna Estella, and I own several hotels, including the Villa Verona. Since I heard what happened, I've started an investigation. I want you to know, Luciana, that the people responsible for this injustice will be properly dealt with." Luciana was speechless. "You're the owner? Why did you only show up now?" Rafael replied firmly, "Because I wanted to have all the facts before I came here. And now that I know what happened, I'm here to offer you an opportunity. I don't want you to have that bad impression of us." Luciana looked at him skeptically. "What kind of opportunities?" Rafael smiled slightly. "We'll discuss it tomorrow. I want you to accompany me to the hotel. Trust me, Luciana, this could change your life." She looked at her grandmother, who nodded encouragingly. Despite her hesitation, something inside her told her that this unexpected visit was the beginning of something she never imagined. The next morning, Luciana woke up to the sound of her grandmother preparing breakfast. Although she was still apprehensive, she felt a twinge of hope when she remembered her conversation with Rafael. After getting ready with her only formal dress, she said goodbye to Estella and Gabriel, who hugged her with words of encouragement. "Go, my daughter. God is with you," said Donna Estella, while Gabriel, his eyes shining with pride, waved excitedly. Upon arriving at the hotel, Luciana felt a mix of emotions. It was strange to return to the place where she had been humiliated, but she stood firm, determined to face whatever came her way. In the lobby, Rafael was waiting for her. Dressed impeccably, As the day before, he smiled when he saw her. "Luciana, I'm glad you're here. Let's go up," he said, guiding her toward the elevator. During the short ride, Raphael made sure to reassure her. "Today is not a day for worries. I just want you to see something." When the elevator doors opened on the administration floor, Luciana was led into a large, well-lit room. Inside were a few employees she recognized, including Morrow. He looked uncomfortable, his hands fidgeting and his gaze fixed on the floor. "Good morning, everyone," Raphael began, his firm voice filling the room. "We are here to clarify the recent events involving Miss Luciana. After a thorough investigation, it has become clear that there were a series of administrative failures and unfair decisions were taken." Luciana looked around, feeling the curious and tense looks of those present. Morrow, however, seemed frozen, as if he knew his time had come. "For this reason," Raphael continued, "I have decided to make important changes in the hotel's management. Morrow, you will be transferred to another unit in a position of lesser responsibility, so that you can rethink your professional stance." Luciana felt a twinge of satisfaction, but remained silent. Raphael then turned to her with an encouraging smile. "Luciana, I know that words are not enough to make up for what happened. That is why I want to offer you something more. You have demonstrated courage, integrity, and a sense of responsibility that few possess. That is why I would like to invite you to take on a new role, that of assistant manager of this hotel." The silence in the room was broken by murmurs of surprise. Luciana, completely stunned, took a moment to process what she had just heard. "Assistant manager? Me?" "Yes," Raphael confirmed. "You have shown that you have the qualities necessary to lead, and I want people like you on my team." Luciana felt tears well up, but she kept her composure. I don't know what to say. Thank you for believing in me." Raphael smiled again. "You've earned it, Luciana. Now we're going to transform this hotel together." As she shook Raphael's hand, she knew this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where she could finally show her full potential. The next few days were a whirlwind for Luciana. Although she was thrilled with the opportunity, she knew that the position of assistant manager came with great responsibilities. Raphael, ever patient, guided her firmly, explaining every detail of running the hotel. "Don't worry, Luciana," he said as they walked through the lobby on one of the first days of training. "You've already shown that you have the most important thing, the ability to make difficult decisions under pressure. The rest is practice." Luciana watched intently as he pointed out aspects of the operation, from guest handling to event logistics. Every detail seemed new, but she absorbed the information with determination. For the first time, she felt that someone truly believed in her potential. Meanwhile, news of Luciana's promotion spread among the employees. Some looked on in admiration, while others, like Clara, celebrated openly. "I knew you were special, Lou. This is just the beginning," Clara said, hugging her friend. Others, however, did not hide their resentment. Morrow, now relegated to a lesser position in another unit, barely greeted her when he passed her. Luciana, however, maintained her professional demeanor, refusing to stoop to the level of those who did not value her efforts. One day, while reviewing the preparations for an event, Luciana noticed Raphael standing in the distance, watching her with a slight smile. When he approached, he asked, "How are you feeling now that you're on the other side of things?" Luciana laughed lightly, adjusting the name tag that still looked strange on her uniform. "It's strange, but also incredible. I never imagined something like this could happen to me." Raphael nodded, his expression becoming more serious. "You deserve it. Always remember that." However, not everything was rosy. Some difficulties began to arise, especially when she had to deal with unpopular decisions among the employees. One specific situation involved rearranging shifts to cover an important event, which generated resistance among the team. "Why do we have to stay late?" asked one of the employees, with his arms crossed. "This has never happened before." Luciana took a deep breath, remembering Raphael's advice. "I know it's not ideal, but we need to work together to ensure the success of this event. I promise to make up for everyone's efforts." Although there were still harsh looks, her empathetic approach managed to minimize the dissatisfaction. Little by little, she began to gain the trust of the team. That night, when she returned home, Donna Estella was waiting for her in the kitchen with a proud smile. "My girl, I knew you were capable of great things. God never fails to reward those who do good." Luciana smiled, hugging her grandmother. "It's just the beginning, Grandma, but I know I'm on the right path." As she rested that night, Luciana felt that, despite the challenges, she was experiencing something she had never imagined. It was as if all the previous hardships had been preparation for this moment. Luciana quickly began to excel in her new role. Her experience as a housekeeper helped her understand the needs of her employees, and her empathy allowed her to connect with both staff and guests. Raphael watched with satisfaction as she gained respect within the hotel. One morning, Clara hurried into the office. "Lou, Mr. Martinelli, the demanding businessman, is complaining that room service was late. Do you want to speak to him?" Luciana took a deep breath, adjusting the blazer that still looked too new on her shoulders. "I'll take care of it." She walked to the guest suite, mentally organizing how she would approach the situation. When she knocked on the door, Mr. Martinelli answered with the stern expression that had preceded him. "Finally, I thought no one here would resolve this," he said, crossing his arms. "I apologize for the delay, Mr. Martinelli. I'm here to make sure it doesn't happen again. What can I do to make your stay more enjoyable?" Her voice was firm but gentle, and she kept her gaze fixed on his. He hesitated for a moment, surprised by her posture. "Well, I need my dinner to be served promptly at 7 p.m. every day. That's the least I expect." Luciana nodded. "Understood. I've already left instructions for the staff to prioritize your order. If anything else comes up, you can call me directly." She handed over her card with a friendly smile. Clara was waiting for her in the hallway as she left. "So, did he yell at you?" "Not exactly," Luciana replied with a laugh. "Sometimes all people need is to feel like they're being heard." While she was dealing with guests, Luciana was also beginning to implement significant changes at the hotel. One of her ideas was to offer weekly training for the staff, something Raphael immediately supported. "If we want excellence, we need to invest in people," Luciana said in a meeting with managers. Although some had doubts, Raphael intervened. "Luciana is right. This is the direction we need to go." Over time, even the most skeptical employees began to admire the young assistant manager. She made a point of listening to everyone's concerns and looking for solutions that would benefit the team as a whole. Her natural leadership began to transform the work environment. Despite her progress, Luciana still faced challenges. Mauro, even after being transferred, spread nasty comments about his promotion. "She only got where she is because she saved that boy. She's not qualified," some said, echoing his words. Raphael could see that the rumors were getting to Luciana. One afternoon, he called her into his office for a chat. "You can't control what others say. What you can do is keep showing your competence. Time will take care of the rest." Luciana agreed, inspired by his confidence. She knew she would prove to everyone, including herself, that she deserved to be in this place. As the sun set that evening, Luciana left the hotel with a shy smile. Although she knew there was still a long way to go, she felt like she was building something solid with her own hands. Luciana's big test came with the arrival of a special event, an international conference organized by a prestigious client. The hotel was bustling with activity like never before, and all eyes were on her, hoping that her leadership would be sufficient to handle the challenge. At the preparatory meeting, Luciana outlined a detailed plan, dividing the tasks and making it clear what she expected of each team. Her hands-on approach was increasingly gaining the trust of the employees. "I want everyone to know that we're all in this together. If you have any problems, please contact me directly," she said, closing the meeting on a confident note. As the event unfolded, the first setbacks arose. One of the speakers complained that his room had not been prepared according to the specifications sent. Luciana immediately took responsibility. "I apologize for the inconvenience. We will correct this right away," she told the guest, personally supervising the team to adjust the room. In the kitchen, a late caterer jeopardized the opening dinner. Luciana rushed to help the team rearrange the menu. We don't have the original ingredients, but we will improvise with what we have. I trust you, she told the chefs, who were impressed by her calm and leadership under pressure. At the end of the first day, Raphael found Luciana in the hallway, visibly exhausted but satisfied. You are handling everything very well, he praised. It's impressive to see how you deal with problems. It's not just about me, Luciana replied. I have an incredible team. I just do my best to show that we are in this together. Over the next few days, the conference proceeded without any major incidents, thanks to the dedication of Luciana and her team. The highlight was the closing dinner, where Luciana came up with the idea of creating a welcoming environment that reflected the local culture. She worked with Clara and other staff to decorate the hall and ensure that every detail was perfect. Raphael, upon seeing the finished hall, approached Luciana. You have a gift for this, you know? You transformed this place. I just wanted people to feel at home, Luciana replied with a shy smile. That evening, after dinner, the conference's main organizer stood up to give a speech. I want to thank the Hotel Villa Verona for its impeccable hospitality, and especially Miss Luciana, whose dedication and professionalism made all the difference. Thank you for making this event a success. Applause filled the room, and Luciana felt tears of emotion well up. For the first time, she felt that her work was being fairly recognized. When the evening ended and the room emptied, Raphael found her again. I'm proud of you, Luciana. This is just the beginning. Luciana nodded, looking around gratefully. Today I realized that, no matter how difficult the road to get here has been, it was all worth it. The days following the conference's success were marked by significant changes at the Hotel Villa Verona. Raphael's trust in Luciana grew stronger with each challenge she overcame, and her leadership skills began to attract the attention of other members of the board. The team, previously suspicious, now looked at her with respect and admiration. Despite her intense routine, Luciana never stopped spending time with Donna Estella and Gabriel. One night, while they were having tea in the kitchen at home, her grandmother watched her with proud eyes. My daughter, you are going far, but never forget where you came from. It is your humility that makes you shine. Thank you, Grandma. You are my inspiration, Luciana replied, holding her grandmother's hands. One day, Raphael called Luciana to his office. The serious tone in his voice made her nervous. When she entered, she found the hotel owner standing, looking out the window with his hands in his pockets. Raphael, did something happen? She asked, worried. He turned around with a slight smile. Yes, something very good. He pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. We received a proposal for an international partnership, and Villa Verona was chosen to be the model for this expansion. I want you to lead the project. Luciana blinked in disbelief. Lead? Me? Yes, Raphael confirmed. There's no one better than you to represent what we're building here. Your dedication, resilience, and humanity are exactly what we want to bring to the new hotels. Luciana felt the weight of the proposal, but also the excitement of such a great opportunity. It's a huge responsibility, Raphael. Do you really believe I'm ready? More than ready, he replied with conviction. I see the potential in you, Luciana. I always have. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of preparations. Luciana immersed herself in work, leading meetings, organizing teams, and traveling to see the locations where the new hotels would open. Each step was a challenge, but she felt more confident than ever. In the midst of all this, something unexpected happened. During a late afternoon meeting, Raphael, who had been with her at every stage of the project, called her for a private conversation. Luciana, there's something I've been wanting to tell you for some time. He began with a sparkle in his eyes that she had never seen before. From the moment you walked into this hotel, you brought something I didn't know was missing. It's not just about work. It's about how you've changed everything, including my outlook on life. Luciana felt her heart race. Raphael, I don't know what to say. Then maybe don't say anything, he replied, leaning closer. The moment grew more intense, and before she could react, Raphael kissed her. It was a gentle gesture, but loaded with emotions that both seemed to have kept bottled up for a long time. That night, Luciana went home with her mind racing. She knew that this would change much more than just her professional life. 6 months later, Villa Verona hosted another big event, Luciana and Raphael's wedding. Surrounded by friends, family, and employees, they celebrated not only their union, but the incredible journey that had brought them there. As she watched Gabriel and Donna Estella smiling in the front row, Luciana felt a deep gratitude. Everything she had faced had brought her to that moment. And, as Raphael always said, that was just the beginning of something even bigger.